in, and it looks like a lot of election results are in right now, but we're going to focus on Prop 22 and try to keep things from getting too political. But hopefully you guys have been paying attention, and you saw we actually released a video a little bit earlier, and from Chris, a contributor, our newest contributor over on the Rideshare Guy. And so if you haven't seen the update, Prop 22 has passed. I just wanted to hop on here and get some feedback from drivers, see what everyone was saying. I'm going to pull up the latest results here. It looks like 58.4% of folks in California were a yes on Prop 22, so that's 6.7 million votes. 41.6% were a no, that's 4.8 million votes, and so far 72% are reporting. So it's not a done deal, but it's basically a done deal. Uber and Lyft have already sent out emails to drivers sort of congratulating themselves on, and I guess drivers too, on a victory for Prop 22, and sort of going through the whole sort of taking their victory lap, frankly. So just wanted to hop on here and chat with everyone and see, really I wanted to cover, we've been getting some questions, and, just kind of answer any questions that you might have, but also set the expectations and the landscape for what's next. What's going to happen in California now that this has passed, but also what's happening in other states. Other states like Massachusetts were considering, or actually already had on the books, laws very similar to AB5, and New York State has passed a bunch of stuff. So I'll sort of share my opinion, been thinking and talking about it a lot, and can kind of answer some of your questions there. So hopefully everyone is filtering in right now, and hopefully you're hearing me loud and clear. I'll go ahead and pull up the live chat right now if I can figure out how to do that. Let's see. And I'll be able to start answering all of your questions. So let's see here. Options and chat. Okay, so Massachusetts sues Uber. Tuan over on YouTube. Ted's asking questions on YouTube. Appreciate everyone joining. See Dan, a lot of familiar names and a lot of familiar faces. So appreciate everyone joining. I know this is a big topic, so feel free to let me know where you're chiming in from. And the first question that I do have for the audience watching right now live is, I just want to get your quick reaction. I have my thoughts. I sort of had a sense, from the surveys we've been running and talking to a lot of drivers, sort of what most drivers feel. But, now that it's a done deal, now that Prop 22 has passed in California, drivers and gig workers in California are going to be staying independent contractors and potentially getting some benefits, which we can get into the merits of, just how much benefits and if they're actually going to be beneficial to drivers. We can get into all that, but I'd be curious to know, what your feedback is there. So feel free to chime in. If you're watching live right now, you can watch in the live, or you can talk to me in the live chat. I'm reading all the comments. I see Tommy, Christopher, Catherine, Roy from Auburn, California. I know we're probably gonna have a lot of California folks on this live stream, but this does have pretty big implications for other states and frankly the rest of the country. So I'll make sure to answer all of those questions. If you guys are watching live on YouTube right now, feel free to give this stream a thumbs up. And I guess really if you're not watching live either, give it a thumbs up if you're enjoying the content, and make sure you subscribe too if you haven't already, so you get notified of all the latest and greatest videos, and especially when folks like myself or others from the channel go live. If you're on another platform, you'll also be able to, whether you're on LinkedIn, I'm streaming right now to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, but I think most people are watching live on YouTube. So Joseph says, New York won't be far behind. I'm going to put his comment up there on the screen. Oh, cool. They added a little feature. Now we can see your picture, Joseph. Hopefully you don't mind. And I also see we've got some comments coming in from Roy over on Facebook. He says, I surely hope they keep the bonuses. Rating our own rates would be really nice, not just the multiplier. We should have control. So in California, kind of the backup plan that these companies, or Uber specifically, has had, they've given drivers some freedom and flexibility to set your own rates, and kind of given you some ability to set the surge multiplier and things like that. So I think the big worry that I have with Prop 22 passing, I think for the most part, you guys have been following my channel, I think it's better if drivers are independent contractors and employees. That's sort of my personal opinion. But to bring up Roy's point, it keeps going off the screen, but to bring up Roy's point, like the one thing I'm worried about now that Prop 22 is passed, if the companies say, okay, we got the independent contractor, we got what we needed, let's give them this quasi minimum wage based only on engaged time, and let's give them a little bit of money for healthcare if they work 15 hours or more across all the platforms, but now we're going to lower rates over here, or we're going to take something else away here. That's kind of what I'm worried about, is that they give some and then they take away in some kind of like more sneaky or secretive area. So that's kind of what I'm worried about. Big D says, how much is Uber and Lyft paying you? Which is funny, because I was actually a no on Prop 22, kind of out of more for principle than anything. I don't know for sure I didn't know for sure that it was going to pass, but I had a feeling it was going to pass, but really more out of principle. I wrote on the blog when we did an update a few weeks ago that I was a no on 22, really more out of principle. Like it just didn't sit right with me that these companies, were sort of spending $200+ million to basically write their own rules and legislation. And I just sort of know that, frankly, independent contractor status, I think, is great, and I think it benefits a lot of people. But over the years, the job has gotten less and less independent, right? You have a lot less say over when you can drive and where you can drive, right? If they lower rates over the years and replace them with weekly bonus programs that require you to do 3 trips in a row and drive in certain times in certain places, I hate to break it to you, you're not an independent contractor anymore. So that's kind of how I'm feeling there. Samuel, good question, says, I drive for Instacart. Would this affect me? So yes, Prop 22 does affect not only Uber and Lyft drivers, but also gig workers across the state. So if you're on Instacart, Postmates, DoorDash, really any of the gig service platforms, Prop 22 does affect you, and you're now, it's official. You're an independent contractor, and you'll be entitled to the benefits that were laid out in Prop 22. So I see we've got Chris joining Real Rideshare Stories, and also he's been contributing a few videos to the Rideshare Guy lately. He did a good video on Prop 22 earlier that I know a bunch of people have checked out already. So thank you for joining, Chris. And I think I texted you, Chris, if you want to come on Skype, I'll see if I can bring you on. I can't make any promises, but I think I'll be able to bring you on if you add me on Skype. I think I'll be able to bring you on video, and we can try that. I just texted you my username, Chris. Let's see. Blake from Facebook says, Uber is good with hiding stuff and taking stuff away, like the surge issues with food. Yeah, I know we've reported on some of the surge issues with Uber Eats. And Big D says, bro, I started at 75-20 split. That doesn't quite add up. I think it means 75-20 or 80-20 or 75-25. And now they pay you what you want. But that's sort of my point, right? Is that what if they just start taking a bigger commission, for example, in the future, right? They're now paying you more when you're during engaged time, or pay this minimum rate. But if they just take a higher commission, that's a perfect example, to be honest, Big D. Like, that's the stuff that I'm worried about. And, where I think, like, it's kind of like, we have to ask, like, Uber and Lyft, like, hey, we have to really trust them. But I just don't think that they've earned drivers' trust, over the years. They've paid a lot of lip service to it, and frankly, I think done the bare minimum. But I don't think that they've proactively gone out and improved a lot of things for drivers. So David says, why are we not getting paid for the whole mileage on long distance pickups? And so I think you're referring to basically, after a certain threshold, you start getting paid for, the long distance. I can't remember what the feature is called, right? The long distance pickup, basically. And, I think that it kind of like, I don't think there is a good answer. I think drivers should be getting paid for that. And that's an example where if you are a true independent contractor, right, you're not going to drive all the way out to the middle of nowhere to pick someone up and then do a 5 or 10 minute ride, right? You want to know where they're going, if it's going to be a long enough ride, if it's worth it. And if it's not, they should have to pay a premium in order for you to get out there. And the problem with the system now is it's very consumer friendly, right? The fact that Uber doesn't show you that information, David, is great for someone who lives out in the boonies, because now they can get a ride and they're not really paying like the true cost of that ride. It's kind of being subsidized by other rides or by the companies themselves, right? And so I think that, ultimately, like, sometimes things are cheap for a reason, right? Like, if you're getting a great deal in one case, it might be because someone, in this case the driver, is kind of getting screwed over. So Sean says, I have a 4.94 rating on Uber and 4.85 on Lyft. One thing I'm curious to know from you guys is that, I think my channel and my blog and really my whole business is all about helping drivers maximize their profits and sort of be the best driver, be the best courier that they can be. And frankly, it's pretty clear in the data that if you're a top driver, you make more than the average driver, or you make more than the bottom percent driver. So I'm curious to know if you think, what you guys think about that, because that's one thing that I've always enjoyed about working in the gig economy. There's obviously a lot of negatives and you can't control what the companies are doing, but frankly, there's a lot of new drivers out there that don't know what they're doing. There's a lot of bad drivers out there that don't know what they're doing, and it's really not that hard. If you're using the destination filter, if you're doing 2 apps, if you have backups, if you have strategies, if you have a plan, you can definitely out earn the average driver. So I think that's one thing that I know I was particularly worried about if drivers were to be employees, and now everyone, when you're a Starbucks barista, for example, right, everyone gets paid the same amount on day one, whether you're great or whether you're terrible. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because if you're really good, you make more, I think, as an independent contractor than you might as an employee. But at the same time, if you're a really great employee, you might get promoted and have room for career advancement. So there's a lot of kind of dueling, dueling, I guess you would say, I don't know, just sort of dueling factions, right? A lot of positives and negatives. And I think that's why Prop 22, frankly, when we surveyed our audience, we got over 609 responses, a bunch from folks on YouTube. So appreciate if you're filling out our surveys. It's a great way to have your voice heard if you aren't responding to our surveys. But 66% of drivers, I want to say, in California were for Prop 22, and the vote ended up being very close to 60%. So drivers, really were pretty prescient in that, what the general population ended up voting on Prop 22 was very similar to what drivers voted on in our surveys and wanted. I think the big caveat there is that, most drivers are part-time, right? Most people are doing 10 to 20 hours a week or less. Maybe pre-pandemic, now things are a little bit chaotic and changed up and different. But, the drivers who are doing 30, 40, 50 hours a week or more, the full-time drivers, frankly, they're the ones that are sort of getting screwed because they don't really get to take advantage of all the flexibility. That they get some of the flexibility, but not nearly as much as if you're only doing 10 hours a week, right? Yet they're sort of paid like independent contractors, but they're working like employees. So curious to know what, how many hours you all are putting in on the road right now during the pandemic. It's sort of, in some places things are getting better, in some places things are getting worse. Jason says, I'm a 5.0 with 14,127 rides. It's sort of one thing I've noticed is some people are really able to figure out the system and others aren't. And I don't want to, I'm going to make a huge generalization here, but I feel a lot of the people that were for Prop 22, have figured out the system. There were some, maybe some more full-time drivers and part-time were against Prop 22, but it was still a majority of full-time drivers. When we surveyed our audience, a majority of full-time drivers, 50 to 55% were still for Prop 22. And I would have thought that number would be lower. And I think it's because for a lot of people, if they figured it out, they can make the gig work and they're happy to keep working. If they can't figure it out, they quit or they stop driving, or they're people who, kind of want to say, go for employee status, because I think that employee status is a lot safer in that respect. So good question here from Drew. He says, does this mean Uber will go the third way of employment like Dara has referred to? I don't think so. Probably more like a fourth way, back to less is more. And so definitely, Drew, I interviewed Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi on my YouTube channel, if you haven't caught that interview. And he was really, the interview, they wanted to talk about Uber's proposal for a third way. And Prop 22 really is their version of a third way. Uber and Lyft and all these companies have been super clear. They want drivers to stay as independent contractors. That's their number one thing, what they'll spend $208 million on. But then from there, they are willing to offer some extras. In this case, it was a guaranteed minimum wage only when you're what they call engaged time. So if you have a rider or if you're en route to a trip, and then they wanted to contribute, they wanted all the gig companies to contribute to a health benefits fund if you were doing 15 hours or more a week. Now, One thing that I think is kind of cool that I will give the company some credit for is that 15 hours per week is across all the different apps and services. So if you're working Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, they're going to add up all your hours, actual working time, not unpaid time, which we can also get into, or period one time basically. And they're going to add all that up and across different companies, and they're going to share information and data apparently, and then you're going to actually qualify for this health benefits plan. So in that way, it is cool because that's something that I've never seen before. These companies like actually sharing data and information and the benefit of a driver. So we'll see what happens there. And let's see. Jason says, Rideshare Professor is a socialist union shill. I like Rideshare Professor. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that it's just, with issues like this, I mean, people tend to vote in their best self-interest, right? Like, that's politics, that's just people in general, right? So if you're someone who sort of, enjoys more of the flexibility or more of the, the part-time nature, you're probably going to be more likely to vote yes on Prop 22 than someone who isn't, right? Because you're taking advantage of a lot of the benefits. I think, and that's the challenge. That's why it was so hard. That's why I'm just not a fan of employee or independent contractor, one or the other. There's elements of both that I think make a lot of sense, right? Like, I like if drivers get to stay independent contractors and now they get some benefits, right? Like, what are the things that every driver cares about? Every driver cares about making more money, not being unfairly deactivated, better customer service, more transparent ratings, lower commissions from the companies. Now, what did Prop 22 address out of all that? Not really any of those things. Maybe the minimum wage and the benefits fund sort of have potential for drivers to earn more. So that's sort of where it was really hard for me to support Prop 22 fully and get way behind it and be like, this is amazing for drivers, because I just think they should get a lot more. I think that, in the city of Seattle, for example, they started charging Uber and Lyft higher fees last year, and now they actually have a third-party deactivation center in the city. So if you're deactivated in the city of Seattle going forward, you can actually go to a third party and present your case and not be totally screwed out of a job, which happens in every other city, right? And that's something that every driver cares about. So I just think there's a lot more opportunities to improve things for drivers with legislation that everybody cares about, right? Like, there's stuff that we can all agree on. We're never all going to agree on health benefits and employee versus independent contractor, but there are things like every single driver, courier in this chat right now, watching live or watching after the fact, I think can agree on the fact that they want to be paid more, right? So how do we start to address those types of items? So that's kind of what what I'm thinking there. Dan says, freedom of choice is a beautiful way, but needs some input from us. Definitely agree. Alan chiming in, he's a platinum driver on Uber and Lyft, 5.0 on both apps. I have to see it to believe it, Alan, just kidding, but that is a great rating. 22,000 trips combined, 40 hours a week, 4 years driving. So he's, Alan is the typical driver who I think he's probably someone who's really figured it out. And I'm sure you have plenty of complaints about the companies, but if you've been doing it for 4 years and you have a 5-star rating on both platforms and you've done over 20,000 trips, there's obviously something that you've figured out that frankly just some other drivers haven't figured out. And that's kind of why I have my YouTube channel, why we have the courses, the book, all the free content that we do. It's to help those drivers figure it out. Let's see. So I'll go for a few more minutes here. I appreciate everyone joining. Looks like we're up to over 100 people watching live right now. I know Prop 22 is a big topic. I want to talk just maybe one more topic just about kind of what happens next for drivers in other states too. I know this is California only. Not everyone lives in California, of course, but I do think this Prop 22 initiative has big implications for the rest of the country, other states, other cities, for sure. So I'll just take a quick pause here. If you haven't given the video a thumbs up, if you're enjoying it, feel free to do that now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, follow me, all that good stuff, so that I can make sure I get content to you when you need it. And I think we're looking good here. We have our first comment from Mark over on LinkedIn. He says, will the riders be charged more now? So I think riders will be charged more now, because when you look at it, Uber and Lyft are saying that they're now going to pay this minimum wage, right? And it's based off of engaged time only. And the 30 cents per mile reimbursement. So it seems like, when drivers do have trips, they're most of the time going to be out earning that minimum wage, in my opinion. But if there's a situation where it's like a really short ride, or not a desirable enough ride, or you're sort of only getting a few rides here and there, I think that could be a benefit. I don't know. It's really like I'm not that confident that the minimum wage, since it's only based on engaged time, is going to be that great of a thing for drivers. The companies are all saying that drivers are going to earn more, but frankly, like, I'm going to need to see them show me how much drivers were earning before, how much they're earning after, and crunch all the numbers before I would believe it myself. The health benefits fund, though, does sound like something. It's pretty straightforward. Once you get to 15 hours across all the platforms that you're working for, the companies are going to pay more. Just hopefully they won't take it away from some other area. And these transactions, right, it's pretty simple, right? If a rider pays $10 for a trip, Uber takes, let's call it $3-4, and then you get the rest. There's only 3 parties involved, right? So if you start making more, it either has to come out of the company's cut or from the rider's cut. And we know that the companies are all losing money, so it's very unlikely that they're gonna pay, lower their commission. I think more likely is that they're just gonna charge riders more. So that's kind of what I think will happen there. Dan says, Harry has been advising and helping thousands of drivers find the best way to succeed and show you personally ways and opportunities. Appreciate that, Dan, and definitely agree. Joseph says, only drivers that have no business driving want to be employees. The best want to be self-employed businesses. So I think I partially agree with that, Joseph. I think in certain places, like if you're in San Francisco and you're doing 40 to 50 hours a week, like I think you can make pretty damn good money. I think Jay, who has actually moved on, shed a tear for Jay, from the rideshare guy to pursue his other passions outside of rideshare. I think that, folks like Jay, right, if you're doing 40, 50 hours a week and you're really strategic and you know what you're doing and you're getting all the bonuses and you're in San Francisco and you kind of basically know your shit, you can make a lot of money. I mean, he was making very consistently, $2,000 a week in San Francisco, a little higher cost of living, but doing 40, 50 hours a week. And I think that if you're in a city like that, like there's really no excuse for the most part. But if you're in certain other cities, like I think in the smaller to medium-sized cities for a full-time driver, I don't think it's, I don't think it's that great of a job, frankly. Like if you're in a smaller to medium-sized city and like, weekends might be busy, but like you have to go out and drive some weekdays, like I just don't think there's that much money out there, in those situations, right? So I think it's a bit situational, but Joseph, I totally know what you mean. There's some drivers who like sometimes will argue with me on YouTube or Twitter and say like, oh, this is like the worst. I went out and drove and I made like $4 an hour, and I'm like, okay, when did you drive? Where did you drive? Like, why are you driving? You know what I mean? Like they're using really stupid strategies basically, right? And so I think that's, again, like that's kind of what my whole business is about. It's about like helping drivers find the times, the best opportunities that also align with your schedule too. So, because everyone has a different schedule, right? If you have to work 40 hours a week, but you can't work during the most profitable hours, you're probably not going to be in love with earnings potential. So Allison says, Jay, if you're watching, we miss you. I bet he's probably on a beach in Thailand doing some online coaching. Jay's got a couple of other businesses that I know are doing well, so wish him the best. Dan says, almost 100 watching. Thank you. Thumbs up, like, share, and support. Yeah, appreciate that. Mario over on the Facebook page says, remember, when riders pay more, they will take it out on the drivers. Beware, we need protection. And I think this is probably the last thing that I want to talk about with you guys, is just understand that there are trade-offs, right? If you want to be an employee, or if you want minimum wage, or if you want any of these benefits for drivers, anything that's going to benefit you as a driver, there's going to be trade-offs, right? We have the system we have now with, kind of independent contractors, but Uber and Lyft control a lot of things, obviously, and you're probably not a true independent contractor, and it's the way it is. If you want a minimum wage, for example, you're going to have to give up something, right? In this case with Prop 22, if drivers start making more from the minimum wage guarantee during the engaged time, we're going to have to give something up somewhere else, right? And I don't know exactly where or what that's going to be. Maybe it's a little bit less flexibility, and I think a little less flexibility is probably okay. Like right now, you guys all have the ability to literally log on and log off whenever you want, to do one trip and log off. Like what if Uber came out with a policy that said like you have to do at least 2 trips in a row every time you log on, right? To give them more, sort of like ability to schedule people and kind of predict demand and supply better. Like, I think that would be totally reasonable if drivers got something in return. So I think that's the thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the future with all of this legislation, right? Like, a lot of people want to be employees and they want minimum wage and they want healthcare and they want this and they want that, but they don't consider any of the downsides, right? And like, I wouldn't believe everything that Uber and Lyft and these companies say that like the world's going to end if drivers become employees, but I do think there are trade-offs. So hopefully we've covered everything that you got, or not everything, but hopefully we've covered a lot of the questions that you all have about Prop 22. And if you do have more questions, if you're not watching live, feel free to chime in. I'll respond to the comments after the fact. And I know we'll have a couple more Prop 22 and sort of analysis, recap type videos coming out. So if you do have more questions about Prop 22 or anything else, as always, leave a question down below in the comments and I'll make sure that we address them in the comments or in a future video too. I see my buddy Anthony just chimed in with a question on YouTube, so I got to answer you, Anthony. He says, how did California expect everyone to be employed by multiple gig companies? Who would we say you are working for if you did Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash at the same time? So I think that's the challenge, is that the companies wouldn't be able, they may restrict you from working for other companies for that very reason. Or, the thing is, when you become an employee, the companies now care about how efficient you are. Like right now, if you're a really shitty driver and you go out and you only get 1 ride per hour and you're only, like utilized, let's say 15 to 20% of the time, the companies don't really care. And that freedom and flexibility is nice, but as soon as you become an employee, those companies are looking very carefully at utilization. They want it to be as close to 100 as possible, right? So they may not allow you to, or they won't allow you probably to work for other companies, right? They won't allow, they may only allow you to take a bathroom break every certain, amount of time that like normal employees are allowed. So I think we'll see what happens there, Anthony, but I think, a majority of drivers do want to remain independent contractors with the caveat that they be treated truly independently. And, I'm sort of like, I would say I've got a healthy skepticism that some of the benefits from Prop 22 will help drivers, but we're going to be kind of the guinea pigs in the experiments for this new model, this new third way. So we'll see what happens. Appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. If you haven't given this video a thumbs up, please go ahead and do that now. Smash the like button, as Graham Stevens would say. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and make sure you subscribe in the future so you know about when I go live, when we have new videos coming out. Turn those notifications on. All right, stay safe out there, and until next time, see ya.